Okay, so how many people here live like 10 minutes away from a fast food restaurant? So, like, all of us. Okay, how many people have seen the documentary on Netflix called Food Inc.? Okay, a couple. Well, if you haven't seen it, you might have heard of it. I watched it last semester, and I had to look away at some parts because it was really disturbing. So my topic is on fast food and why we as consumers shouldn't support it because of the animal abuse and the health consequences. Many people have no idea how their food is handled and what goes into the food making process, and I think we should be aware of this because it affects us greatly, especially our health. And I believe that if I could persuade you to help yourselves to eat better, then it might help. So the cheap, high-calorie treats consumed by fast food joints come at a high cost of health issues. These meals are made to satisfy with high levels of sodium and sugar, which aren't naturally brought to us in that amount, and that's why we crave it so much. So although they may taste good, it comes at a high cost, and the health consequences may be irreversible. These health consequences include heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. So heart disease is a plaque buildup in your artery walls, and it slows the blood flow to your other organs and tissues. SF Gate says that higher densities of fast food restaurants are linked to a greater risk of cardiovascular health problems. Another health consequence is diabetes. People can develop diabetes from becoming insulin resistant, which means that their pancreas is trying to produce more insulin to try to get glucose into your cells, but eventually it can't keep up and the sugar just builds up in your blood. The 2004 study noted that regularly eating fast food doubles your chance of developing insulin resistance, which heightens risk of developing type 2 diabetes. This is by SF Gate. Another big health consequence is obesity, which is being very overweight. And according to Diane Brady, a senior editor for Bloomberg Business Week in New York, in the employee-friendly case for pricier Big Macs, she states, the nation will spend even more, about $190 billion, on paying for health consequences of obesity. That's a lot of money. But although fast food affects our health greatly, it's not the only life that's affected. The livestock used in the fast food industry has been treated like nothing but an object of money, and other than a defenseless animal. Farmers treat the animals and sometimes the workers unfairly. So it's no secret that the Earth has a bigger population than compared to previous years, and a bigger population means we need more resources like food, aka farmers have to produce more and make more profit because they have to keep up with our growing population. So farmers achieve this by altering the livestock in order to produce more, which includes giving them food that's not in their natural diet and feeding them hormones so they produce more. In the film Food Inc. that I mentioned earlier, it's by Robert Kenner, and it has a 96% Rotten Tomatoes score, and it was an Oscar-nominated film. It shows that how chicken meals, a lot of them are jam-packed full of chickens, and they don't get to see the light of day. They're shaded, there's no windows, and usually they don't have a lot of room to walk around. So also it shows you how they modify the chicken by giving it hormones. It speeds up its growth and makes it produce more like chicken breast which is mainly what we eat out of it. But because the growth rate is so extreme, its bones can't keep up with it, and it doesn't develop fully. So usually they can't really walk well, and they can only walk like a couple feet before collapsing. So even if they did have space to walk around, they really wouldn't be able to. So another thing is how some workers can be treated on some of the farms. So a lot of the workers, the reason why cheap food is so cheap is because a lot of the workers are undocumented citizens. And because they're undocumented, they're usually abused or mistreated compared to documented citizens or workers. The workers slave away all day for a paycheck that's usually less than minimum wage and less than they can live on. Twilight Greenaway, who is an Oakland-based writer and editor in Can the Food Industry Kick Its Cheap Labor Habit, writes, "They work long hours for pay that's often less than they're agreed to when hired. Undocumented laborers are more than twice as likely to earn less than minimum wage and twice as likely to experience wage theft other than documented workers." So you're probably wondering how they get away with this. How is this unjust treatment just whisked away? No one pays attention to it. Well, apparently there are laws preventing this, but either they're not followed or they're not enforced. In the article, Greenaway talks about how a program named H-2A that has statements against the unjust treatment of the undocumented workers, but this program has never worked. The farmers choose not to follow it because it is too much paperwork and it means giving up their almost free labor. So, in conclusion, the food industry has cheated their way into cheap food and lots more profit through inhumane treatment of animals and people. Some farmers have chosen the better path, even if it means less money. Robert Kenner from Food Inc. Interviews a meat farmer who has chosen this path. The farmer's name is Joel Salanton, and he raises his livestock the proper way with lots of roaming space and gives them the proper diet. And then he harvests them the right way without any factories or machines. This may be more work, but really at what cost? He also interviews a farmer named Troy Roche, and Troy Roche has his family owning a farm, and he says, "People have got to start demanding good, wholesome food of us, and we'll deliver, I promise you." So he tells us that what we want is what we'll get. So if we want to eat healthier, if we want healthier food, then that's what we'll get. We just have to want it. Thank you.
So Tristan, what'd you think?
I thought the intro was pretty engaging. It got everyone kind of involved right off the bat. The thesis was really clear. He like flat out said it, so that you shouldn't support fast food because of their cruelty and the health risk stuff. I thought you were definitely relying on your note cards though. But you were clear about each point. You showed the right consequences of the fast food for like the health reasons, cruelty to animals, and the worker treatment. And I thought your conclusion was good. You kind of brought it back, and then you also told us what we can do to get healthier food. We just kind of need to demand it. I like that. Overall, I thought it was
Okay. Hey, I think the introduction is satisfactory. The audience survey has never been my favorite, but it was okay as a way of trying to engage the audience here. It's certainly better than some that we've had. You identify a goal pretty clearly. There's a little bit of a preview of where you're headed in the presentation, so that helps. Your first point is signposted pretty well. There's this whole discussion about how hormones and other things are being manipulated, and we need a little bit more information about that. You cite S.F. Gates 2 or 3 times. I don't know who S.F. Gates is. I assume that they have got some kind of credentials because they've done research, and that research got published someplace, but I don't know where exactly it got published and what the nature of the research was. So I think you could probably enhance the credibility of your source a little bit by helping out there. The general issue of health is probably not one that there's a lot of dispute on. People recognize that there are all kinds of health issues that come from consuming fast foods. The second part of your argument focuses mainly on the animal processes that are going on, although there is a discussion here about other kinds of things that are included in the food, like the starches and the sugars and the sodiums. I'm not sure that that's necessarily associated with the meat products that you spend most of your time talking about. So it does feel a little bit like that's on its own separate subject, unless you create a structure that allows us to fit all of those things together. It's going to feel like you are just kind of switching topics, and so I think you need to plan a little bit more on that. I'm not saying it doesn't belong there. I think it probably does belong there, but because of the way the speech is being developed about the animal issue, the rest of it seems like it's just an add-on, a tack-on, instead of something that's integral to the argument that you are presenting. The same thing with the obesity issue. Now, when you get to the animal treatment argument, this is, where it sounds like it's the second point of your speech. It takes up a lot of the time in the presentation. There's a description of the chicken mills, and I guess that's supposed to be a little bit horrifying, although, the idea that it's ultimately going to be food is one of those things that probably tempers that. You probably have heard the old saying that laws are like sausages. You don't really want to see them being made. And I think that that's probably true of a lot of foods. There's always a process in there that's not particularly pleasant. So the question then becomes, so what would be appropriate? Is there a standard that we can say that's right, just, fair, moral, and it's also healthy? That's, I think, something that needs a little bit more development. But like I said, the visualization's okay. You've got a description of the hormone treatment that you present there. There's a little bit of an oxymoron when you talk about the treatment of the workers there. Undocumented citizens, that's definitely an oxymoron. Undocumented employees definitely would fit there. And now you're kind of getting into a slightly different issue that concerns, political considerations that are outside of all of the food issues that you're talking about. And I think it's a tendency of a lot of arguments in almost any field where there is, I hesitate to use the term muckraking going on, but especially when you're talking about a film like this, that they throw in everything in the kitchen sink, and sometimes the extra stuff becomes a distraction instead of something that builds the argument. So it feels a little bit like it's detached. Maybe that could come out of the argument, and you could focus more on the animal treatment a little bit more, or you could go the opposite direction and say, the industry is just abusive in a whole bunch of ways, and we need to have some kind of reform that's going on. The reforms that you sort of suggest concern a change in the way farming is done, especially the way animals are raised for consumption. And I'm sitting there thinking about, okay, what's the practicality of this? Is this going to be able to produce the amount of food that is sustainable for the industries and for the population? And the closest that you come to it is your last quote, which I think is a good attempt to answer that issue, that the market will basically respond to what people want. So if people act like they want these kinds of things, then that's what they'll get. I think that that's a good general response, but like when it comes to the amount that's being produced and what the demands are, that I think is a little bit more problematic, and I think that there needs to be some more information on that point. But your exit, I thought, brought the discussion pretty well, and like I said, I like the idea of that exit quote being about how we're going to solve this problem. I think that does help quite a bit. Presentation issues, your voice is fine, your eye contact is okay. I mean, you are having to look at the notes, but I didn't think that you were staring at the notes all the time. You seem to be looking up most of the time when you're talking to us. You're engaged. Could it be more engaging? Maybe a little bit, but everything is satisfactory and above. I think you're doing a good job for the most part on the presentation. All right. Thank you.